I didn't think that it could get worse. And yet, for all of these characters, it got so much worse. Welcome back, everyone. We're here to discuss It, Welcome to Derry, Season 1, Episode 2, The Thing in the Dark, which is pretty much, I feel like, Pennywise. There's a lot of lurking in the shadows, in the dark. Before we get into this, I want to know, what are some of your favorite Stephen King stories? Let me know down in the comments below. So, what did I think of this episode? Well, this episode is less focused, I feel like, on horror sequences and like scary moments, and is more focused on, I think, establishing our connection to these characters in the show. We get a lot of character building for characters like Ronnie, and we learn about, the loss of her mom and how I think her mom died in childbirth. So the idea is that she, I think, feels kind of guilty. She also feels guilty for her involvement in helping the kids to get into the theater, and as a result of that, her dad getting arrested as a murder suspect when he was not at the theater at all and wasn't even involved. So Ronnie's dealing with a lot of guilt. Lily, meanwhile, is dealing with a lot of her fears of going back to the mental hospital. And basically, we're just diving deeper into everybody's fears here as we get to know these characters and care about them. We also learn more about Leroy Hanlon and his relationship with his son, Will. And we also learn about his wife. And we learn that Leroy kind of has a little bit of a strained relationship with his son, where he just doesn't really get his son. His son is super into science, and he was more of a sports kid growing up. We also find out about his kind of strained relationship a little bit with his wife, Charlotte, who, I gotta say, I freaking love Charlotte in this show, and I love Will, and I hope nothing bad happens to them, because they're a couple of my favorite characters. Also, I love Marge. Marge is Lily's friend, who was in with kind of the popular crowd, the patty cakes, her and Lily. And then Lily, when she had to go to the mental hospital because of what happened to her dad, she kind of got removed from the patty cakes, and now she's back, and she's back at school. And Marge is trying to get Lily back into the group and also try to kind of make jokes so that she can be included in the group. Clearly, Marge, I think, has a lot of insecurities that she is dealing with, and I love that she kind of masks with humor. She feels like a very relatable character. Although I never wore glasses that thick in school, but I was always trying to be the funny kid, I guess, so that no one would notice that I'm insecure. I mean, it's still early days. We're still kind of just getting to know these characters. But what I really liked about this episode is that it was more focused on establishing who these characters are, making us care about them, so that when awful things happen to them, we're going to feel more nervous. We're going to feel more unease. We're going to feel like anything can happen, because the way so far this show has been structured, right, is in episode 1, we were introduced to all these kids, and most of them were taken out in episode 1. And then in episode 2, we're now just building up who these characters are. So we've already established anyone can go. And now we're getting to know these characters so that we love them, so that when they're in danger, we feel it. This is called a good way to tell a horror story, to make me actually care. And I do. I think that they did a good job with it in this episode. I love that people are calling the hallucination that Lily sees with her dad's face in the pickle jar, Picklewise. I think that's hilarious. And it is important to remember that even though we haven't seen a ton of Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise yet, there is still that presence of Pennywise that is felt like a ripple effect on a lake throughout this episode, because every scare that we see, every fear that we feel kind of is radiating out from Pennywise. That's what Pennywise does. He plays on your fears, which is also why, and I don't know how I feel about this, to be honest with you, but it's also why it's interesting that even the military kind of fold into this idea of what's happening with Pennywise and how they're linked to this, with Leroy being established as a character in episode 1 as a guy that says, he basically doesn't feel fear. He's like been through the most horrific stuff in the war, and he doesn't get scared. He doesn't get scared easily. He ends up being ambushed in the previous episode while he's on base by people who are claiming to be Soviet spies who want information from him, and he refuses to give it up. And not only that, but he also, in this episode, dives deeper into the investigation. When Masters, who refuses to salute him in episode 1, is blamed as being one of the people that was part of that attack and then they were just trying to get a rise out of Leroy, he doesn't accept this. Hanlon believes that there's actually someone else behind it because he recognizes the weapon that was used in the attack. It's a Soviet weapon, and he knows that it's notoriously finicky and hard to operate. And he just doesn't believe that Masters could pull this off. Case in point, he visits Masters while he's locked up after Masters has confessed, and he tries to get him to assemble and shoot him with one of these weapons. He brings it to their meeting. Masters is unable to do it. And that's when Hanlon decides to try to escalate this because he doesn't believe that they have the right person. He believes something else is going on here. And this is when it's revealed that there is something else going on here and that General Shaw actually wants to bring Hanlon in on this secret military operation, where we also know we're introduced to some of Hanlon's friends on the base. And one of them is Dick Halloran, who, yes, is from The Shining. And Dick Halloran, when they're out drinking, says that he has a secret mission and he can't tell people what he was up to today because it's all top secret. And they're laughing at him and whatever. When they get back to base, because they've been out drinking, they're kind of given a bit of a hard time. And also because, of course, they're black. So they're given a hard time by this one guy who doesn't want to let them in. And Dick Halloran's like, just tell him my name, Dick Halloran, and we'll be good to go. He does this, and they immediately get clearance to go back in to their quarters. And so later in the episode, when Hanlon is onboarded to the secret mission, he sees Dick, and we know now that Halloran is part of this secret operation. He wasn't just saying that, although I really believed him, honestly. I thought he was telling the truth, and he was. And clearly, this is in connection with the stuff that was alluded to in The Shining. This character seems to have a lot of knowledge about a lot of spooky stuff. And in this case, it seems that what the operation is they're trying to find this weapon that they can use that's tied to Derry, trying to find it so they can use it. And they said that they need Hanlon because when they go in to capture the weapon, they need someone that can face up to the fear, because this is a creature, a being, Pennywise, who can strike fear into you to the point that you just die. Which is obviously what we've seen in the lead up here. Now, I don't exactly know if Hanlon is truly without fear. I don't know if this plan will work. I don't know what their plan is once they get this thing. They basically want to stop the Cold War. I'm like, okay, seems a little weird, but I'm willing to follow you because so far I have liked everything else they've built up. I'm very curious to know how much military involvement will be in this show and what the military actually thinks they know about Pennywise. And I guess it makes sense because a lot of this show I think is going to be about unpacking the lore, to have some people that are at least aware of what's going on. So we have some characters that are the kids that are encountering this horror for the first time, and we're seeing through their eyes just the sheer terror of, how do I even deal with this? What is even happening to me? Is this all in my mind? Is this real? How do I get help with this? Well, how do I explain this to adults when I need help to help me fight this monster that sounds insane? And a group of individuals that are adults that do believe that this is real. So I don't know if those two groups are going to link up at some point. I don't know if we're just having kind of two parallel stories where we have people that kind of know what's going on and are trying to face it head on, and you know, these kids who are completely out of their depth, who are just trying to figure out what's even happening right now, what the source is, where it's coming from, and how to stop it. I don't know, and I don't know how all of this is going to come together, but I'm very intrigued, and I think we've built up enough about these characters that I feel for them and I want them to succeed, and I'm cheering for them, and I want to find out more about their pasts and their histories. And so that is why I liked episode 2 even more than episode 1. Episode 1 was like, you think you know how this is going to go, you don't. Episode 2 was like, and now we're laying the foundation for everything to come. So for some people, it might not be enough scares, which I can understand. I also know that in episode 1, people did not like some of the child actors, so I don't know if the kids that they didn't like were removed in episode 1, or if they're still here, or what people's thoughts are. I feel like they're trying to approach this from it also being a period piece. There might be things that maybe seem weird, and I'm wondering if it has to do with the way that the script is written, where they're trying to kind of write these kids as though they're from this time period and how they would interact with each other might be different than the modern era. I'm not sure, but personally, I find all of the period piece elements of the show to be quite interesting, quite charming at times, and quite disturbing at other times. I think it's really cool that we're also using it to examine problems that we've had historically and how they can also kind of add to a commentary of where we are now. So I think all of that is interesting, and I can't wait to see what they continue to do with that and how deep that goes as the story unfolds. So pretty much that's everything I have to say about episode 2. I think episode 2, honestly, I think I liked it more than episode 1. I think I'm going to give this episode a 5 out of 5. It was really enjoyable to me, and I just like how much we're working on the characters. And not enough people spend time building character in horror stories, which is why they often fall flat, in my opinion. That's all I have for this one. Let me know your thoughts on it. Welcome to Derry down in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, stay nerdy. Bye! And if you missed my episode 1 review, you can check that out over here.